It began with a soft, hollow sound he hadn't heard before, a subtle vibration that seemed to come not from within the apartment, but from slightly beyond it, like something knocking gently from the inside of a place that didn't yet exist. The wall in question stood between the bedroom and the living room, plain, painted over too many times, with wallpaper peeling at the seams like skin left too long in the sun, and for as long as he had lived there, he had thought of it as just a partition, a slab of drywall and plaster separating one narrow space from another. But something about the noise that night made him pause, press his ear to the surface, and wait. The knock didn't repeat. What came instead was a silence so heavy it seemed to push back against his listening, not empty, but filled with a kind of restrained density, as though the wall were holding its breath. He didn't think about it again until 3 nights later, when his hand brushed against a seam in the wallpaper that felt somehow out of place, too sharp, too vertical, like a line that had been deliberately hidden but not well enough. Curious and suddenly restless in a way he couldn't explain, he fetched a knife and carefully slid it along the edge, peeling the old paper back in a slow, trembling fold. Beneath it, to his quiet astonishment, was the outline of a doorframe, not painted over, not patched, just there. Wood. Old. Faded. With a small brass knob almost invisible under the decades of neglect. It had no lock. No keyhole. Just a surface smooth from time, waiting. He stared at it for a long time before touching it. It wasn't fear, not yet, more like the nervous anticipation of discovering something you're not supposed to find, like opening a drawer in someone else's house and seeing your own handwriting inside. The door didn't resist. It opened easily, without creak or groan, as though it had never been fully closed, and behind it was a narrow opening, no more than a meter wide, leading into darkness, thick and uneven, the kind of darkness that doesn't retreat when touched by light, but absorbs it slowly, like liquid poured into black cloth. He fetched a flashlight. The beam cut into the space, weak and sickly against the heavy air, revealing a small room, no more than 2 meters across, with low ceilings and no windows. The walls were bare concrete, cold and raw, with patches of mold forming along the corners like bruises on pale skin. But it wasn't the shape of the room that disturbed him, it was what stood inside, a chair, a small wooden table, and on the table, a cup, half full, still glistening as if recently used. The dust on the floor was untouched. There were no footprints. No signs of entry. Yet the chair was slightly pulled back, and the cup was warm to the touch. He backed away, slowly, breath shallow, pulse in his throat, and shut the door without slamming it, careful not to make noise, as if whatever had been in the room might still be listening. The next morning, the door was gone. Not just closed, gone. The wallpaper was intact, seamless, the seam where he had cut now smooth as if never touched, no trace of dust, no scent of mold, only the faint impression that the hallway was shorter somehow, tighter, like the walls had grown inward by a fraction of an inch. He thought he had dreamed it, and almost believed it, until that night, when he returned home from work and found the door open again, not physically, but as a feeling, a pull from the far side of the apartment, a shift in pressure that told him the space had returned. And this time, something had been left just outside the threshold. It was a photograph, old, wrinkled, black and white, of a table, a chair, and a man sitting in the shadows, his face obscured by the angle, his hands folded in front of him, resting on the same table he had seen the night before. There was no caption. No date. But the man's shirt, plain, gray, slightly oversized, looked exactly like the one he had taken off before bed. And he had never owned a photograph like that in his life. He kept the photograph on the kitchen table for nearly an hour, circling it with his eyes as if waiting for it to change, half expecting the edges to curl inward, the ink to dissolve, the image to fade, anything to signal that it did not belong, that it was a remnant of sleep or stress or some elaborate misfiring of memory, but nothing happened. The photo remained stubbornly real, textured, undeniable, and though he could find no identifying marks, no names, no fingerprints, the familiarity of the scene it captured lodged itself deep behind his ribs like a cold blade slowly twisting, not out of pain, but out of the deep, unrelenting certainty that he had seen this place before, not in dreams or memories, but in glimpses, subtle, unformed, like the afterimage of something viewed just out of focus, now refusing to leave. That night, as he moved through the apartment with deliberate caution, he avoided the wall entirely, keeping his eyes low, his shoulders tight, pretending that space no longer existed. But apartments do not forget, and walls do not forgive the act of discovery. As he passed into the bedroom, he felt it, not a breeze, not a shift in temperature, but a difference in volume, as if a portion of the apartment had become deeper, the air thicker, the space behind the wall not only present again, but expanded, now breathing in sync with the rest of the rooms. And though he tried to ignore it, to lie still and wait for sleep, the pressure mounted in his skull, a slow building hum like a distant generator buried just beneath the floor, and when he finally rose, barefoot and disoriented, the door was there again, visible, waiting, slightly ajar.